Well, hello plant lovers, it is Matthew in Melbourne welcoming you to my channel. Thank you for finding me. Here I try to grow cold, cool, intermediate orchids here in Melbourne, Australia without any help from greenhouses, grow lights or humidifiers or any equipment, really just me and them struggling along inside or outside or not at all. So plant lovers of the world, if that sounds like your bag and your conditions, do hit subscribe. I post every week on a Friday and I am a complete amateur. And plant lovers, today, a sweet spot for me, one of my favorite types of orchids, which we're going to look at because it is deep, bleak midwinter, and that is Sarcochilus. Now, this is a wonderful group of Australian orchids. They're almost exclusively found here in Australia. On the east coast, there's a couple, I think one species that stretches to New Guinea and the Solomon Islands, and that's it. Amazing orchids, easy to grow, easy to take care of. They only do flower once a year for a briefish period of time. But my goodness, when they're all doing their thing, they are incredible. And last year I made a video with Dan, the vet, he's a veterinarian, who has the most amazing collection of Sarcochilus. And I must say, triggered a little bit of an acquisitive gene in me, and I did go and find some more because he just has this bench full of amazing varieties and forms and colors in the flowering season. And I thought, I want to aspire to that in a slightly more condensed way. So I did buy a lot of seedlings. Now I made a video about repotting them, I think, and as it's midwinter and they're just beginning to show their signs of flowering, I thought I'd just do a bit of a catch up with you because a few things have happened, not all of which is positive. And it's good to see what can happen when you, well, not when you take your eye off the ball, but you know, things happen with orchids. So Sarcochilus, as we know, often lithophytes or epiphytes, Australian East Coast. They're not native to my area, but they do seem to like Melbourne conditions and thrive fantastically here. So it's quite a tough orchid. I've never grown them indoors. So for those of you in the Northern Hemisphere, perhaps in conditions where they can't be outside all year, I just don't know how well they'd go inside. I think the thing is that they need winter light, that's the thing. So if you can grow Australian dendrobiums, you'll be able to grow these indoors. But I can't give you any advice, I'm afraid, because I don't grow them that way. For me, they live their best lives outside. So ideal conditions for these are morning sun, dappled light, plenty of light in winter. One of the things I did learn from Dan when I made that video last year was he waters his a lot more than I water mine. Now I've tried to follow his regime. A couple of mine are in tricky positions though, and they are looking a little desiccated, but they're tough orchids. They've still got flower spikes. Anyway, so that was my big takeaway. So I then went on this buying binge, which we'll see when they're all in bloom. But I thought I just want to show you some things that's going on at this time of year, which might help you in your Sarcochilus orchid journey. First thing then, it is midwinter and they should be producing their flower spikes. Now, depending on the species or the variety or the hybrid you've got will depend where they're at. This is a beautiful red, it's actually just called, oh no, actually it's got a name. Goodness me, there you go. It's called Judith Snowy. I don't think that's the right label for this, but anyway, we'll see. But look, so you can see that spike there. That's a good sort of, 4-ish centimeters, 2 inches. Really great. There's another one just emerging under there too. And Sarcochilus produce their flower spikes at the axil of the leaf there in the stem. Now, they can flower from a stem year on, but they'll never flower from exactly the same spot again. So identical flowering habit actually to Phalaenopsis. And weirdly, not a dissimilar growth habit, except with Sarcochilus, you get much more new growth of plantlets at the base of the plant. But you do get these leaves. The leaves are quite slow to grow. The leaves hang around for quite a long time. It produces this sort of stem-like structure, I suppose, and the flowers do emerge in the same spot. So yeah, actually, just thinking about it, saying it out loud, not dissimilar to Phalaenopsis. So at this time of year, your flower spikes, midwinter if you're in the southern hemisphere, and then in the northern hemisphere, of course, it will be mid to late winter. You should be getting your flower spikes either just little nibs or quite established, as that one is. Now, often for me, the species Hartmanii, which is the classic white Sarcochilus, I'll drop the picture in here, is the first to bloom. And of course, the more species and varieties you get, the more bloom time you're going to get, because the flowers don't last a huge amount of time, maybe 2 to 3 weeks if you're lucky. So 'Tis a bit of a space issue. You know, they take up a reasonable amount of space and they just flower once, but it is stunning. And most of your sort of growth points are going to have multiple flower spikes. And the bigger the plant, obviously, the more blooms you're going to get. So you can get 5, 6, 7, 10, depending on how big the specimen is, flower spikes, and each spike is going to have multiple blooms. So they are little clouds of color and absolutely stunning. Anyway, so if everything's going well, that's where your Sarcochilus should be at this time of year. Now, all I'm doing is I'm still watering, even though it's winter and it's cold, still watering, but no food. Now, if you're wondering what the flower spike actually looks like, this is one of the seedlings I bought last year. And this is a cross between amber orange and Gabrielle well spotted. So it's a sort of a tangerine spotted type of flower. And I wanted to get more orange and yellow in my life. So this is why I bought this one. But I just wanted to show you this, and I'll come in and show you more closely. But here you've got the little nibs of the flower spike. So it's much less advanced than the previous one. Now, a little like Phalaenopsis, the flower spikes emerge in the same spot that an aerial root can emerge, and you might be confused as to which is which. And just like Phalaenopsis, the flower spikes of Sarcochilus are a much limier green, and the new roots are going to be a much more silvery green as that little nib appears. So you will be able to tell if you've got flower spikes or roots appearing. Other thing, of course, is that new root growth can appear at any point in the year, whereas your flower spikes are generally only going to appear when they should, which for most of these hybrids is going to be midish to late winter. Okay, next thing that can happen at this time of year, which people do often ask me about as well, is leaf dropping, leaf changing color. Now, this one actually fell off because I wanted to show you, but there we go. There is an old leaf, and you see it's a little bit discolored, and you might look at that and think, oh, that's diseased. Now, the thing is, of course, your leaves should be dropping off or aging from the bottom of the plant, like, once again, a Phalaenopsis. So it's quite natural. However, they don't produce that many leaves each year, and the leaves are long lasting. So you shouldn't be having a vast turnover of leaves. So one leaf per plant per year is kind of okay. If more leaves are turning yellow and dropping off, then something else is going on. And then obviously, if you're having any issues with the new leaves at the top of the plant, then something is definitely going on. But a leaf yellowing and dropping off towards the base of the plant occasionally is quite normal. And then we can also just see this one has got 2 spikes coming out there as well. This is a new seedling for me too. What is this one? This is just a cross between Rosella LP and Gabriella Bach, whatever that might mean. We'll see. Okay, things that can go wrong, things that go bump in the night. Well, this one I bought in my feeding frenzy. Now it's got no label, which must mean it's got no label. Anyway, it basically arrived, and I must have bought it because there was an image of the flower. And it's got old flower spikes, which you can see here and here. And in fact, I've got my little scissors. Oh, look, there's the flower spike there. So I'm going to snip that off. That is last year's flower spike. So you can snip them right down at the base, again, as you would a Phalaenopsis dead flower spike. Good news is there's a spike just emerging there, so it is going to bloom. However, the thing with this plant, when it arrived, and I bought it online, it was as rotten as all hell. There was, I think, the stubs of one root left. When I unwrapped it, all of the roots were in really bad condition, so I had to trim them off. But here's the thing. Sarcochilus, from my experience, is one of the toughest orchids and one of the easiest orchids to bring back from the brink of death. So, and I'm going to show you one at the next, which you'll think, give up on that one, but I won't. They are really easy to resuscitate. So even if there's no roots, you probably will stand a good chance of saving the plant. It will send out new roots and it will grow for you. I think the trick is to keep the medium light, a light free draining mix, as you would with most orchids, but particularly these. And while it's recovering, just don't water it too much. Keep it on the drier side, but not bone dry. Give that plant a reason to be going out and finding moisture, but you're not going to risk rotting the main structure of the plant. So this one has sent out new roots, and it's much firmer in the pot now than it was. It's recovered brilliantly in a year, and it is sending out flower spikes. So it's got to be healthy and getting nutrients for it to be able to flower. So very happy with that. Oh, there's one of the old roots that is still lingering. So easy plants to bring back from the brink of death. And so talking of Lazarus and raising the dead, oh, this one, look at that sad dead plant. You would think that there is very little hope there. No, I'm just going to drop in some imagery of when I bought this plant. And it arrived in really bad condition, but the flower was gorgeous. And you can see on the video, when I bought it, it was in bloom. And I bought it online. It was eaten, dehydrated, and with no roots. And there was actually 2 plants in the pot, as you can see. So I've immediately repotted it. Now, this particular one here, you can see the leaves are really burnt and not well looking, but can you also see though all this new root growth that's emerged to sustain the plant? That will recover, and it's actually got old flower spikes here because it was in bloom when I bought it last year. Now, the other bit of the plant, I'm actually just going to trim off some of these dead bits because it is so distressing. Anyway, and I'm going to trim off the top of that dead leaf. There we go. And I'm going to trim off that dead leaf. Goodness me, it's in such bad condition. Now the other bit of the plant, this one here, if I'm not mistaken, that is actually a flower spike coming out. So it is trying, and that has produced new roots which have gone down into the medium. It's still very loose though, but still alive and recovering. So I think at least this one will thrive and prosper. I'm not quite sure if this one's going to make it, but we'll see. Anyway, once again, don't give up, as Kate Bush sang. Sarcochilus can recover. And although this one looks in such bad condition, I think this is going to pull through. And next year, let's do a follow-up with this one because it's in a striking pot and we won't forget it. And the flower is beautiful. So just for your information, it's Marina Harriet crossed with Hartmanii George. There we are. And you've seen the flower in the vid. Absolutely glorious. So I want it to survive. Now, something else that can go wrong, and has gone wrong for me in the past, at this time of year, the leaves of Sarcochilus are really leathery. They're quite succulent-like. So generally, slugs and snails do not like them. However, the flower spikes, and let's just go back to one that's in spike, like this one. Those flower spikes are really much softer and very juicy. So slugs and snails love the emerging flower spikes. And that has been a problem for me in the past because all mine are outside. So, you know, you manage your slugs and snails to some degree. But last year I just missed the ball a little bit. And my Hartmanii had a lot of its buds nibbled, which was unfortunate. Although, again, because it's such a tenacious plant, the spike will still continue to grow and whatever hasn't been eaten will actually open. So a lot of orchid types, if something happens to the spike, that's it, the whole thing fails. But with a Sarcochilus, it's got a tenacious will to live. So if you can get to it in time, you'll still have a, you know, deformed and somewhat stunted flower spike, but it will still bloom for you if you get to it in time. This one, look at that, munched within an inch of its life and all the new leaves and growth. So this was a new seedling and I repotted it. It immediately put on growth. And for some reason, just this one, the slugs and snails went for. The other curious thing was that it actually went into flower spike autumn, late summer, much earlier, like a complete season before. And I was really excited and I was prepared to do a video like this Sarcochilus is blooming earlier. And then they were all eaten and the whole plant was almost eaten down to a stump. So I was very distressed. Anyway, so you can actually see a lot of that damage. So the leaves though that were munched are growing out. The tip of the plant was eaten out, but it's kind of branched and formed a new lead, bless it, and flower spikes. So there you go. The only thing is the plant looks a little unfortunate because it's nibbled. The leaves take a long time to grow and stay on the plant for a long time. So if something has happened to one of them, you're going to have to bear witness to it for quite some time, which is the same with Phalaenopsis actually, as we've been comparing. But I'm thrilled that this looks like it has got 2 flower spikes, maybe more actually. There's kind of a lot going on at the top of the plant there. And there's just odd damage. Let me just try and trim that. There's some odd damage from that slug damage. Anyway, but once again, for me, slugs and snails are the main problem. They can also eat the new roots as they're coming out, so they can really affect the plant and put it back. But this one, despite all the savagery of its nibbling, is growing and putting out flower spikes. So as you can see, tough as nuts, and they have a real zest for life. So there we are, plant lovers. That is where my sort of newish Sarcochili are up to at the moment. Everything's kind of coming along beautifully. I won't start feeding them again until spring. I'll give them a topical slow release fertilizer and then a bit of a liquid feed. I don't tend to feed these as much as my other orchids actually. Maybe familiarity has bred contempt. But they're a great orchid, and again, just showing you this one, you get very quickly lots of new, actually I'll show you on a seedling, you get lots of new growths around the bottom of the plant. Can you see this one here? It's got three new growth points coming out very, very quickly within second year of growth from a seedling. So they very quickly form specimen plants for you, and of course the more growth points you've got, the more flowers you'll get. And one of these stems should be sort of a blooming size within a year, so very quick. So if you are going to buy seedlings of orchids, Sarcochilus are a great one because you're not going to have to wait a decade for it to bloom, just a year. So there we are, plant lovers. Thank you for this little Sarcochilus catch up. Of course, when they're all in bloom, we will do a magnificent show and tell because I want to have an array as wonderful as Dan's when his were all out, because his bench just looked incredible with all of those different blooms. So that was my aim, to try and get different colors and different forms and as much variation as possible. And of course, the more you have, which sounds like an evil advert for consumerism, but the more plants you have, of course, each one will flower slightly differently, the longer period of time you're going to have one of your plants in bloom. As I said, for me, Hartmanni starts generally, and then the different hybrids bloom, and some of them actually quite late. So you can get, you know, 2 months out of them if you've got enough variety in your hybrids. So there we go. Plant lovers, thank you very much for watching. If you want to know what I'm doing next week, hit subscribe. I post every week on a Friday. Complete amateur, rambling my way through this strange orchid journey. But I hope it's of use to you, and I look forward to seeing you next week.